Okay, welcome back. Then we passed turn. We're in late November 1855, and a quiet fortnight actually since early November, which is where we left off. No major kind of engagements or anything like this. We detached the cavalry division under Osman from Hussein Avenue. We moved Hussein Avenue up towards Zvornik. He is currently inside the fortress. We're going to try and utilize the shelter of the fortress, which is partially constructed, to get his force recovered as soon as possible. To try and kind of organize supplies a little bit, we are basically shuttling some of the supply detachments from Omar Pasha's force to Sofia and back, just to kind of get these supply formations full up, stockpile the supplies, and just to try and quickly get this force with a full supply inventory. We're going to go ahead and detach another supply detachment. I think it's going to take 20 days. We'll go for force march, evade combat, and yeah, that's it. 1 second. There we go. I think what we will do is to take one of the supply detachments out, and we'll put that in. Yeah, that's fine. Good. So that's it for now. We're going to sit tight, I think, for another fortnight at least. We've now got 3 armies in place in Zvornik. We've got decent enough supply being drawn from Sofia. Once we're in Bosnia, that will change fairly quickly unless we're able to take Katare quite quickly. That is an Austrian fortress, which also has a depot. Just looking at that is a very well defended fortress indeed. That's going to be a tough fight. But that would kind of resolve some of our supply issues until really the depot at Zvornik is built, and then we need to enlarge the depot quite quickly. We need to continuously enlarge the depot. I'd probably suggest for the next year or so, and turn that into a really large military base. We could possibly also take, having a depot at Sarajevo and a fortress wouldn't really go amiss. Sarajevo is let's have a look, 2, population level of 2. We'll kind of consider those options once we kind of move a little bit further back into kind of Bosnia, but obviously we need to be able to have Bosnia as a place where we can conduct operations. So we're kind of laying the groundwork at the moment, and we can see a frenzied flurry of activity. The weather has begun to turn now. We are in late November. So Osman Pasha moved to Albania to lift the siege in Tirana. It looks like the Austrian cavalry brigade slipped a net. It's actually in Montenegro, so that's their declaration of war is providing them. There's a good chance they might be engaged by Montenegrin forces, which are obviously very small, but they're larger than a cavalry brigade. We'll keep an eye on that. There is a possibility that a portion of this Austrian army could move into Montenegro as well, so we need to kind of keep an eye on that. If that is the case, there's a chance where we could exploit that situation, maybe try and trap them or something like this. But we're going to see how things unfold over the next fortnight, get our forces into good fighting shape before we step off really and begin to conduct an attempt to liberate Bosnia-Herzegovina from the Austrian yoke. Beyond that, no other significant military developments. The fleet has sorted into the Adriatic. We're going to continue that, and we're going to sit in. It's going to take 3 days to get to the Gulf of Venice, and we're going to sit tight there, I think, for a period of time, partly for observation purposes, keep an eye on things. We can see that the Italians are doing not too badly. They have the area surrounding Milan, so they're besieging an Austrian force inside Milan. They've lifted the sieges at Alessandria and Piedmont, and whatever Austrian force is here in Savoy or Chambéry is trapped, basically. So that's good. It's good the Italians are doing well. The fear was that they would get bludgeoned, completely destroyed, within the first couple of months, and then whatever Austrian forces are tied up there will kind of begin heading southwest towards us. So we'll keep a careful eye on that. Economically, bit of a slow economic turn. I mean, we finished a textile shop in Smyrna, which is good news. The railroad in Smyrna is about 3/4 done. In Constantinople, about half done, and about half complete also in Adrianople. I believe, about halfway done. We've got the construction of a railroad, 286 or 85 days left. I think we're going to go ahead now. We've got the private capital accumulated and the necessary resources to then look for a rail system in Kavala, and that will serve to link up Constantinople to Thessaloniki. And bear in mind that by this time next year, we're going to have railroads in Smyrna, Constantinople. Well, all of these railroad developments will be complete within the next year. So it's a dramatic period of infrastructure development for us, and that will begin to pay dividends militarily, but also economically, because these railroad developments are focused on our areas of principal economic development of industrial enterprises and the most lucrative kinds of RGOs. Excuse me. So that'll pay dividends in the long run. Other than that, in terms of kind of exports and domestic consumption, slight downturn in the economy in the short term. A quiet fortnight. 62 units of manufactured goods for 188 domestic market. Only 41 exports for 96, and we're continuing to draw in steel from the international market. I think we're mostly importing from, let's have a look, the UK and Northern Germany. We want to kind of keep a trickle of steel. That's not a huge amount. I think I might reduce that slightly now. I might do that directly and make sure that our imports are mostly from the UK. So let's have a look. Where is steel? There we go. So we've got 5 set. So we're going to be pushing for 5 units of steel per fortnight. That's a nice trickle. That doesn't put any kind of strain on our private revenue. The British have plenty of steel for export, so that's fine. Yeah, that's it. Beyond that, nothing significant to report. One thing I should point out on the international front is it does look like a couple of the alliances the Austrians had were kind of fully fledged alliances. They were alliances that include kind of they included offensive actions. Really, they weren't just defensive alliances. So that in both Baden and Saxony have declared war on us, and that's completely fine. That's not going to change the shape. These German principalities, for the most part, are fairly small. You know, they're going to send very small forces if they even do. Bavaria, probably of all of the minor kind of Catholic German principalities, would be a little bit more of a concern, but not any great concern. In the greater scheme of things, these principalities are not going to they're not going to be tipping the balance in any sort of way. That's it. We're going to pass turn now. Next turn will be in early December. I'm going to pop you on pause, and yeah, see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back then. Early December, another quiet turn, and that's okay, because our intention, of course, is to get our forces into kind of fighting shape, and they're really there now. We've got 3 armies in. So the first army under Omar Pasha, that comprises 96,000 men, just under 20,000 horses, 450 odd guns. Second army under Abdul Karim Nadir, 87,000, 10,000 horses, 432 guns. And then the third army under Hussein Avni is 85,000, just under 9,000 horses, 476 guns. That is a substantial force that we have brought into play in Zvornik. That is pretty much our entire field command, almost most of our field army. And weather's rough, but they're all activated, they're all prepared, they've all got their supply issues sorted, so we're going to move. Okay, first army under Omar Pasha is moving into Sarajevo. That's an 11-day march. Hussein Avni is going to hold back with the third army, and he will provide support by fire basically to any of these forces that are moving into place. Abdul Karim Nadir is going to be moving up and blocking any kind of move in through Sava. And again, we've got Hussein Avni in place to engage any forces or to support any forces that engage in big battles. It's a 9-day march here. A 9-day march to Sava, an 11-day march to Sarajevo. There are large Austrian forces here. It looks like much of their field army is in Bosnia or scattered around Bosnia. So it's going to be a big fight. We've got Albrecht and Liechtenstein, by the looks of it, around Sarajevo. We don't know the name of the commander. A history buff might be able to identify the portrait if it's not a generic one. Despite being liking to imagine myself as a history buff, I couldn't identify an Austrian commander from the mid-19th century from the photograph, I'm afraid. But yeah, it's going to be again, I will say this, but I can't see how this is not going to result in some kind of climactic battle, or maybe more than one. But we've done everything that we have to do. We've made all the preparations we need to make. Now it's time for our forces to move and provide a welcome to Bosnia party to the Austrian forces there. In northern Italy, the Italians aren't doing bad, they're really holding their own. We've sent the fleet up into the Gulf of Venice, partly for really reconnaissance. We can see that there is an Italian force, quite a small Italian force, besieging Verona. It looks like they have Milan enveloped also. And yeah, they've lifted any kind of siege on any of their cities. So the Italians are doing rather well. That might mean that Austrian forces have either fouled up there also, or they've just pulled forces back. One thing that we can see is the Austrians are constructing a fortress garrison unit in Dalmatian Spalato split. That suggests that the Austrians themselves are anticipating possibly the likelihood of a fight on their territory. But yeah, the Austrians have really dropped the ball rather hard here in their first invasion, and the hope is that this aggressive maneuver will exploit that situation and get the most out of it. But it's going to be a hell of a fight. I can't see, unless the Austrians happen to pull back or they're set to kind of withdraw, and that they really just have large forces screening. Their intention might be to try and draw us further and further up north, away from our base of supplies or something like this. It's maybe something I would consider doing, but they may not. They may. I mean, in the last analysis, they're fighting for Bosnia, so I guess they want to hold it. But we'll see what happens. What we are going to do then is we've got a reserve army corps which has been constructed in Smyrna. What I'm actually going to do with this force is let's get it loaded onto some transports. We're going to bring it round to. Yeah, let's bring it round and we'll deposit that force in Albania, and that force is going to join Osman Pasha's cavalry division, and we're going to start building up a bit of an ad hoc fourth army. I would say we are going to build an additional cavalry division because I want Hussein Avni to have a bit of mobility in his force. At the moment he's got 2 infantry corps, 2 infantry divisions, so to that end let's build the construction of an additional cavalry division. Let's have a look. 14 officers, we've got 18 in reserve. Yeah, let's go for it. Now my computer is running really slow because I'm kind of doing something in the background which was perhaps ill-advised, because I don't have a powerful gaming machine or anything, but I can see it's looking a little bit twitchy here. Yeah, that's it. The only real combat to report for the past turn was, of course, we were pressing south to lift the siege at Aden, and that has absolutely come off and was very successful indeed. So we've again destroyed all Yemeni forces that were besieging Aden, and that is absolutely something that we want to see. Zarif Mustafa's doing really solid work there with even a reduced force, but a reduced force is actually gives us a bit more mobility. It means that he can draw supplies. We've detached a small portion of his force. It's a militia brigade, although actually in reality these guys are just now regulars. We're going to send that force north, and we want to make sure that Sana is screened whilst we're conducting some kind of colonial operations here. We're building a military outpost that's 1 turn. Yemeni forces look to be quite far away, although they may have some forces concealed in Hadramaut. But we want to make sure anyway that we have a kind of force screening Sana whilst we do some kind of infrastructure development there, colonial development of the city. Yeah, that's it really. Another slow turn economically, but one thing that I can say is that the economy actually for the most part looks really healthy. We make really strong amounts of state revenue now. Continuously, we're always making 200 to 300 private capital revenue every fortnight, and we've got a really good inventory of kind of key strategic raw materials, steel, coal, and also just manufactured goods. So even though we're not generating a terrific amount of revenue at the moment, domestic market sales sit at about what they were. Exports again slightly down. Imports are set at 5 units of steel for 20 capital per turn from Britain. So nothing else to report there. We did offer, I should have mentioned actually last turn, we did offer a proposal for a kind of mutual supply system with British forces. British had some forces anyway, which they've now removed. But I thought that we might use this as an opportunity. We'll offer to supply their forces. They offer to supply ours. We don't see it, ever being a likelihood that we would have forces really based in British territory, but maybe we might dock our ships in British ports or something. Anyway, they declined it. But my thinking was, instead of trying to get them into a defensive alliance, let's offer the things that are kind of in between where we are with them now, which is very high relations, commercial agreement, to try and sort of see if we can kind of leverage a more kind of concrete sort of things from them, short of an alliance, but that would improve our relations. That would be a stepping stone towards an alliance. Anyway, it hasn't come off, but we will. We'll keep plugging away. It took a couple of attempts before we got a commercial agreement with them, but securing a kind of defensive alliance with Britain after this war would provide us with a long-term security, because we don't want wars every year or 2 years. I mean, Russia could intervene at any moment. This war might end, then Russia gets involved, and we have another war with Russia. We don't really want that. So what we want is a kind of, to make these kind of traditional opponents, Russia and Austria, reluctant to continuously engage us in wars. And at least if they do, we have a kind of hegemon on our side, really. And if they don't serve as a deterrent, then at the very least they can be kind of they can be brought into play against Austria or Russia. That's it for now. Our economic admin has been set, exports have been set, and the economy is looking balanced. We've set conversion again for canned goods. So canned goods will gradually, or surplus agricultural produce will be converted into canned goods. Canned goods is sitting at quite a low inventory at the moment, and we're going to start looking now, I think, at getting some conversion from canned goods to manufactured goods. So that requires canned goods shops, basically. So we're going to, they're quite small kind of manufactories, but we're going to start building a couple of those, maybe along the tobacco belt. Pop one in kind of Kavala, for example, maybe one in Thessalonica, maybe one in Adrianople, something like that. That means that we won't have to keep turning conversion on and off, because once we get too many canned goods, it starts vanishing into the ether. Organised crime get their mitts into it. It falls into the black market. We don't want that. And if we can get enough conversion going, it means that if we, conversion is about at parity with what agricultural goods we turn into sort of, basically, how conversion works is once we have conversion set on, surplus agricultural goods are converted into preserved food, but canned goods, basically. One thing that we can do is through building can factories, we can turn preserved foods into very small amounts of manufactured goods. Once we have railroads, of course, the efficiency of these increases. So it's basically a way of kind of converting your agricultural surplus capacity into a kind of manufacturing capacity. I think it's a really, really wonderfully thought out feature of the game, and yeah, it's really, really good. And that's something that we want to do at the moment. We've still got an agricultural heavy economy, but we want to try and convert some of that by 2 stages. First, into preserved foods, which happens automatically if we have conversion set on, and then the next step is to have preserved foods turned into manufactured goods, which is something that we want to consider. We're also going to be looking at building a luxury, let's have a look exactly what it's called, luxury goods factory. Yeah, a luxury goods shop. These are really good. What these then really in turn do is convert a range of commodities, including capital, coal, minerals, wood, manufactured goods, into luxury goods. Luxury goods, as you can imagine, sell at a very, very good rate. There's always an export market for them, and there's always going to be a strong domestic market for them. This keeps the elite happy, and it's another really important kind of feather in our economic cap, really. It's so that's something that we're going to be looking to do, I think, in 1856, is really a couple of kind of canned goods factories and luxury goods shop. I'm going to pop you on pause then. Everything is set for next turn. We're going to keep the main fleet in the Gulf of Venice for the time being, just to try and stop any kind of... there's a Russian fleet here, or a Russian force, bewilderingly. Maybe they're just observing. We don't know what's going on there, but they're not an opponent at the moment. But we're going to try and keep the Austrian fleet bottled up in Trieste. They've got a cruiser division there, by the looks of it, our intelligence tells us. And also we can keep an eye on the Italian situation unfolding. It's really exciting that Piedmont and Sardinia are doing better than anticipated. We want to keep a careful eye on that. But anyway, our offensive into Bosnia begins. We will see how it comes off next turn. Okay, welcome back. Late December 1855. And I'm really hoping I hit the F9. Anyway, we'll soon see once the recording is complete. There was no great battle this turn. So our army's moved into place. Now, really, really heavy weather has kind of blanketed Bosnia. It's a bit of a funny one. So the second army under Abdul Karim Nadir engaged a force at Sava. This was just a garrison force, 12,000 men. That force was completely destroyed. in its entirety. And you can see that Omar Pasha basically takes command of the situation. That's one of the real advantages of having all of these forces in kind of close proximity to each other, is that Omar Pasha is the kind of chief of the Imperial General Staff, is the most senior officer, so he will lend his qualities and abilities to these different formations that are really close to him. So yeah, that's good. But there was no significant engagement in Bosnia. I can only attribute this to really, really heavy weather. Heavy snowfall scattered across Bosnia. And yeah, no engagement. He got there on day 11, but no sort of significant action as yet. We're going to keep in a defensive posture in the same region as the Austrian force, just trying to recover some of his organisational loss, which was much more substantial than I would have thought. But I could attribute that to the sudden turn of the weather. He basically had to march into Bosnia in the midst of kind of very heavy snowfall, which at this time, these troops have very little shelter from sort of really difficult weather like this, unless they're actually billeted in a town or a city. We're going to keep the Imperial fleet, I think, for another fortnight, just to observe, keep an eye on the situation in the Gulf of Venice. I think probably early December, or early January rather, we'll bring that force back. That's pretty much it in terms of developments in the Balkans. We're moving the Reserve Army Corps up to Osman Pasha. It looks like this Austrian cavalry brigade is either back in Montenegro or at least is visible again. It looks even as though Montenegrin forces may have engaged in some kind of action. It looks like they're taking some losses, an inconclusive action as far as I can ascertain. But Austrian forces are beginning to move into sort of Cattaro. We're seeing some Austrian forces on the Dalmatian coastline. This might be significant. They might be making a play for Montenegro. I thought that was a possibility. One of the reasons why I bought this kind of... one of the reasons why I'm bringing this Army Corps into place. I beg your pardon, the Army Corps has actually made land. Okay, so we'll put that force into Osman's command, basically. We're going to keep it there for the time being. But yeah, the idea is if they make a move into sort of Montenegro, maybe we can be in a position to counter it or stop them kind of exploiting a situation to our rear, a dangerous situation down here, which they might be looking to do if we kind of press north. That's it in Aden. No significant counter move by the Yemeni insurgencies to date. We're going to keep Zarif Pasha for the time being at Aden itself. That force, which was detached, is again set to force marches 10 days away from Sana. They've made no move into Sana. That means, well, that's good news for us. That means that we've now begun the construction of a military trade post. A military outpost and a trade post. So it means that hopefully those investments won't be to waste. We're also going to begin the construction of a mission, and we're going to do that, I think, also. In fact, we already have a mission in Aden. The good thing with missions is that long term they lead to a reduction in kind of insurgencies and revolts and this sort of thing. We've also incidentally seen a revolt develop in Palestine, just outside Jerusalem. Jerusalem is besieged. It doesn't look like it's a especially large force. We're going to take a bit of a risk here, temporarily remove one of the brigades from Libya, from Benghazi. We're going to use riverine transport to move that force to try and lift the siege on Jerusalem. It may be the case that the cavalry division that we've begun constructing in Smyrna, when that's completed, we might have to temporarily bring that into play in the Levant. If this situation develops and kind of gets out of control, we don't have anything here. That's one of the downsides of large-scale force concentration, of course, is that it sort of it does mean that we kind of spread thin elsewhere. That's it for the time being. Our economy is kind of set. All exports are set. No major kind of issues with the economy. A relatively quiet turn economically, I'd probably say. Again, we have begun the import of a small amount of rice from Japan, of all places. We have merchants in the Pacific now, and it makes sense to do that just to broaden really our kind of population's access to staple kind of agricultural goods, to different foodstuffs, and that's something that will be sold on the domestic market for a slightly higher price than what it costs us to import. So it will make a profit doing that, albeit a very small one. But it's more kind of national population satisfaction. Again, just giving them access to another kind of food stuff is something that we want to do. I'm going to leave the recording here. I hadn't intended to, but the reason being is when I kind of tried to sort of I'm not sure whether this has been recorded. This sort of late December segment has been recorded, because I very quickly I think I hit F8 instead of hit F9, and then I hit F9. I'm not sure whether maybe I hit both buttons with one finger. Yeah, as such, it's a cautious thing to leave it here. It means that if it wasn't recorded, I could just kind of go back and add a recording and then just add it to the video sort of thing. So I'll leave the recording here anyway, and we'll pick up then, next recording we'll pick up in early January 1856. So yeah, no significant sort of battles this sort of time round, but we are beginning to develop an operation into Bosnia now, and we'll see how that kind of unfolds in the latter part of the winter and then going into spring 1856. So yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.